Yu-Gi-Oh! Banlist discussion for January 2026. Let's see. Muted,
guys.
good take. Good take,
Central here with
Santoli.
another Yu-Gi-Oh! Discussion video. This time we're going to be going over the ban list. We have the 300th YCS coming up. I'm pretty confident that we'll have a ban list before then, not because I have any inside information or anything, but because we've had a lot of events in this format, both before and after that small ban list we had before. And I think that the game's at an okay spot. It's very diverse, but there are a lot of powerful strategies that lead to non-games. I think Konami is going to want to stay on top of it for the 300, so hopefully we have a good format for that. Not that it's awful right now, but there are things to be improved. So I can go through archetype by archetype, what I think needs to get hit in order to get to a better place in the game. Overall,
I agree on the baseline. I think the format in TCG right now is good. I think there's a couple of decks like Mitsurugi Yami or like K9, anything K9 related, that if you don't use a Charmy or Droll against it, the end board it makes is just way too busted. And I think that's a problem. I think the power level of some of the top decks are way too high. And I think they need to get rid of some of the bridges, but yeah.
I think, like I said,
it's still a good format, all things considered.
There are a lot of interesting strategies, but there's a few too many strategies that just go over the top and remove interaction from the game. They go first, they FTK you, and it just sucks after that. Because, you know, it's just a die roll kind of thing. You just kind of try and draw chummies and win the game off that, and that's not interesting gameplay. I think there's a lot of decks underneath the top meta decks that are very interesting to play. And so the point of this list is kind of going to bring those up to the tier 1s and kill the degenerate strategies. So,
yes.
So at the beginning, we're going to talk about the K9 card. So how do we hit K9? This is mainly in the form of K9 VS, but K9 Christian is also a deck. So overall, I've heard different things in terms of how to hit this archetype. There's a lot of good cards in this archetype. Nora is a very good card. Jokel's a very good card. Rip is a very good card. Azuna. In my opinion, though, there's one clear hit that needs to be done, which is K9 Ripper.
Cool.
The big thing is this card just removes interaction from the game.
So my GOAT is speaking facts right now, but my GOAT is also not being realistic. So this is something... We've talked about this before. I've talked about it in my banlist discussion. This should happen. This, honestly, they should have never made Ripper. But it's not gonna. They're not gonna ban it because it's like the centerpiece of the K9 strategy. But yes, making a rank 5 that instantly extends by searching any card in your deck and also negating a hand trap is insane behavior. They should not have printed this card. It's stupid from the beginning. But I don't think they're going to do this. But I agree that it should be banned. Absolutely.
Stuff like Jokel and Roy. Yes, it's a very strong card, especially Jokel. It's very hard to interact with. You know, you get that in level 5 on the board. It's eating like 2 hand traps by itself. But part of the reason it's eating 2 hand traps is one, because Ripper exists. And the other thing is, Jokel by itself doesn't allow you to play through things like Nip or Droll. Or other hand traps if you actually have... stuff like Veil and Imperm, it lets you make a board through them, but it keeps the choke points there. So if I have Jokel and I'm planning to go through Surge in order to dig for VS cards, Jokel doesn't actually prevent that. Or prevent me from Imperming or Veiling the Surge or Ashing it. It's Ripper that does that. And I think that overall, the idea that there's just a card that invalidates hand traps completely, super toxic. We've had it before, so like card by crossout, it's not fun, it's not interactive, and it's not a good playstyle at all, especially when the boards you're making are generally FTK.
I agree, man.
Yes,
I wish they would do it.
The pure K9 deck, unfortunately, it's being used in too many versions where you are making an FTK-like board, and having immunity to hand traps and board breakers is just not interesting, and I think Ripper needs to go. And it's been out for a fair bit. It's been out since August now, and it is a super, so I can see this card getting hit, realistically. As for the other K9 cards, yes, they're very good, but I think the big thing is that these decks are just way too immune to hand traps. When you have Ripper existing, you can't nib them, you can't Droll if they choose to play around it, you can't hold for a choke point, and I think that's a big problem. I think if you remove Ripper, you at least have the ability as the opponent to choose what you're hitting. You know, if you're trying to bridge into a different engine and you have one hand trap, you can hold for the bridge and the force
if
to play.
If they ban Ripper, they need to do nothing about K9
deck
other than that.
Play if you're forced in that position, but it doesn't feel bad particularly for either player, because the K9 player gets to play, the other player gets to try breaking this somewhat fair board.
It should have been only one effect per turn.
Moment for the K9 card.
That would have also been a very elegant solution. It's like, yes, it's a very powerful card, but if you want to search, you can't negate the hand trap or vice versa, right? But the fact that it does both is absolutely insane. It's completely disgusting.
All I want to see hit is the Ripper, and the other kind of K9 cards can stay where they are. Azuna, I think, can get an extra little bit of talk, because this card is a splashable card, but the big thing is it's not being splashed on anything. It seems like one of those cards where if people evaluate it highly, they can choose to play. It's coming up in Yummy, coming up in Dragotail, but because you don't have to play, I think its power level is right where it needs to be at being a very healthy card. I can definitely see that any of these 3 cards getting hit in the future if Azuna gets too popular later on, or Joko and Ori, maybe the K9 decks are still too good after this hits, but I'm perfectly willing to allow these cards to exist a bit more.
Yes.
If you don't have the ability to protect your choke points with Ripper. Moving on to the next archetype, which will be Yummy. So this is both pure Yummy and Mitsu Yummy. And like I talked about at the beginning, is I think there's a lot of very cool decks, interesting decks to play that lead to interaction. And I think pure Yummy is one of them. I absolutely adore playing against pure Yummy no matter what I play against. Yes, it's somewhat annoying because they are a hand trap deck, and sometimes you just get hand trapped out. Then you get hit with Bean School Cupsy. But I think those are the rare games. The playstyle is interesting. I think overall the deck is very fair. Its interruption in the form of Book of Moon is better against some decks and other decks. And unlike the K9 engine, which doesn't really have much weakness because you can't break them.
I think I've seen someone on Twitter post a ban list where Herald of the Arclight was banned, which is also something that I did on my ban list prediction. But then a lot of people said like, oh, if you ban Herald of the Arclight, then Yummy is dead because it needs that protection from board breakers and nib and stuff like that, which I can get behind. I understand what you're saying. At the same time, Herald of the Arclight absolutely needs to go. So one thing in exchange that I've seen someone on Twitter post, I forgot their name, it was weeks ago, but they said like, oh, we can give them back Obedience Schooled in exchange. We give them back Obedience Schooled and to 3, and we ban Herald of the Arclight. So pure Yummy is maybe still a thing and better at going second with 3 Obedience. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I think they might have been cooking with that one.
Or you can't hand trap them. The Yummy has a clear weakness in breakers. It does very good into hand traps, but that's fine. You can have strengths and weaknesses as a deck. And I just adore this deck overall. The playstyle is interesting. It has clear weaknesses and strength, and so I'm perfectly happy not touching this deck at all. The main thing,
Yummy doesn't need Herald to play around Nib. That's just bullshit. You have to make a half board every time if you want to respect Nibiru and still have options left to extend. Because, for example, one way to play around Nibiru was usually to threaten the Herald and then keep going after, because then they didn't have it. If you, for example, at the point where you set your quick play spell, and move to end phase, because you can never make an Omni Negate against Nibiru anymore, they just wait until you set your quick play spell, and then it already becomes harder to extend through the Nibiru. If you use Lollipo in your combo to revive 2 bodies from the graveyard, Nibiru instantly becomes a lot better after. So yes, you have to basically hold a name in your hand. After you set the surprise, you have to hold a name in your hand and then not use Lollipo in your entire combo.
I see people talking about is hitting Cupsy. Don't hit Cupsy. Leave this deck alone. Let Pure Yummy exist as it is. We're going to talk about other hits in a second when we get to the hybrid versions that will hit Pure Yummy as well. But I don't think Pure Yummy needs to get hit any further. I actually think being School on the last list was a bit of a problematic hit because it encouraged people off Pure Yummy and pushed them onto Mitsu Yummy. And I think Pure Yummy is much more of a healthy deck than the Mitsu Yummy. And so I think that this deck was already overhit. We don't need to bring being School back. It's fine where it is, but we don't need to hit this deck any further. It's perfectly healthy, and it being tier 1 for another form, I'll be completely happy with, and I think it's interesting games with it. The problem is the hybrids, mainly the Mitsu Yummy deck. The Soulful Yummy deck's fine. You're just playing a little bit more engine to have a bit of a top up. No problem. You can do that. Problem is Mitsu Yummy. And so how do we deal with that? Well, there's a few ways to deal with it. One is just kill the bridges. So before even going through the Mitsu cards, one is Herald. This card should have been gone a while ago. It's a easy to make floodgate. It now bridges your engine. The bridges is what makes the deck super toxic. I think even in Pure Yummy, Herald would be fine by itself at 1. I'm not particularly a huge fan of it, but it's not the end of the world if it exists. But now that's just...
Yeah, it's a cold take. We don't have to go into it too much, but Herald of the Arclight, they have no alternative. They have no alternative to doing this because they cannot hit Pure Mitsurugi because they're releasing a structure deck in March around Mitsurugi, so Mitsurugi cannot die. But it's the coldest take. We don't have to spend time on it.
Play through any number of fair hand traps, even the unfair hand traps or the floodgate ones. They're good, but they don't always do the job, especially when people are playing very clunky decks like Mitsu Yummy into each other. They're not interesting games. Kill Herald, get rid of the bridge. This card should have gone a while ago. And the other bridge we need to get rid of because It is used as Zombie Vampire.
Yeah.
I think if you're using Zombie Vampire in the form of like force cards, where your supplementary engine that isn't adding anything to your end board is going through Zombie Vampire, like the Christian Horror deck, it's fine. But when you have one engine get bridged into another engine, it's super toxic. Engines are good enough nowadays where their board is enough. When you start mixing engines, you're just making FTK boards. We don't need them. Kill the bridges. I think this is a theme or an idea that most players can agree with. So I think these are hits for Mitsu Yami directly. What about Mitsu Pure? Naturally, these will hit Mitsu Yami as well, but we should talk about the Pure deck. I think that Yami is a very, very healthy deck. It's super fun to play against. I think Pure Mitsu isn't quite that level of fun. It's not a deck I love. That being said, it's not an FDK deck generally if you kill the statues, which they did. We'll get to that in a second, kill the remaining ones. But I think that the deck is fair enough that can still exist. That being said, I think it needs to get taken down a little bit. It is a very low nothing deck. I feel it's somewhat inconsistent. It is getting new support. I want the new support to improve consistency and leave it with a more interactive gameplay. And so how do we get there, making the Mitsu Yami deck a bit more interesting? Or sorry, the Mitsu Pure deck a bit more interesting. So one thing we can do is hit prayers to semi-limit or to limit. I'm putting it at limited. Like I said, there is new support coming out. I think having prayers at 1 is a...
I think that's fair. I'm just wondering if they want to do this with the structure deck around the corner, but I think even after banning Herald, you could still do something about Pure Mitsu if you wanted to. Another card that I was just thinking about is like maybe we can talk about Dominus Impulse. I'm not sure. Dominus Impulse would be a small hit to Pure Mitsu, but it also would hit some other decks. And it's a pretty powerful hand trap. I wouldn't hate that, but I think hitting engines directly probably makes more sense.
A fair decision, especially if we're getting more consistency cards. I would just also preface this by saying Hava can stay at 3. I don't think we need to completely kill the consistency of the deck. Prayers just does more and forces you to consider your plays a bit more, because you can't just go activate a prayers.
Not before the reprint.
Rituals and immediately grab another prayers off the ritual, something back. So you do have to be a bit more careful with how you're using it, but the deck is still functional with it. Again, this is kind of under the premise that there's going to be more support, which has been announced, but we don't know yet. Well, yeah. That being said, if this card stays at 3, I will not hate it. I'm going to put it in the semi-limit for now, just because, I'll put it in limit. I do want this card to get hit. I think Mitsu has time this time. But that being said, if it stays at semi-limited or unlimited, I will not be particularly unhappy. The one card I think needs to go really bad for Mitsu is actually great for Purification. There's not much talk about this card getting hit, but I think overall it's just the top up on the board.
I can get behind that.
It leads to so many uninteresting games, because you start the game with 6 cards or 5 cards you draw. Murokuma was ripping 1, and then Great Purification is trading with anything else. So now you're down to a 4-card hand trying to break a Mitsu Yami board, and it's not interesting. And the thing with Great Purification is it doesn't do anything fun. It's not really in theme either. I think Omni Gates are fine in the game, but they have to be used pretty intentionally. And I think when you already have a end board with a card like Murokuma on it, that's kind of the best piece of the end board. I don't think you should have another card on top of it that just feels really, really good. It does seem kind of weird hating this, because it's like everything else the deck does just gets you to this point.
I like this because it's not like Mitsurugi is going to struggle with its end board. You have another option in Magatama that you can play instead. That is a much healthier card. And most lists these days are not choosing to play both anyways. It's not like they lose a card. They just play Magatama instead of this. And it just makes it more realistic to win against them going second.
Like, this is the cherry on top.
So, yeah.
But I think the cherry on top...
In general, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think they should just stop making trap cards that say negate whatever. And then, like, every deck just plays one searchable trap card that if they go first, they just have an Omni Negate on their board. I think that is just lazy design at this point. But I don't think it's a hot take, yeah.
Top is the problem. Like, Mitsu doing Mitsu things, you make an IP, you have your follow-up through... all the tributing and the effects you'll get on your opponent's turn when you're tributing them. When you have stuff like Murokuma wipe, I think these are interesting interactions. They're giving follow-up. It feels very in theme of the deck. Great Purification doesn't feel in theme, other than the fact that it tributes the negate, the Omni. It just felt so unnecessary in this deck. Get rid of it. I think this card needs to go. I think this card needs to go more than prayers. If we're keeping prayers at 3 and Purification at 0, I'll be very happy with that kind of change. And so you can see here after this list, Pure Yami I think still functions fine. I think Herald is a bit of a big one, but it needs to go. But other than that, the Pure Yami deck does function. The Mitsu deck, like I said, if you think it's too hard, you can move prayers up to...
Like, someone said, like, oh, but the people are not going to play traps unless they're broken. Well, not every deck needs to play traps. Like Mitsurugi is a deck that operates on quick play spells, which functionally are very similar to trap cards. You don't have to give this deck a trap. It doesn't need one. It's not a trap deck. Not every deck needs to have a bunch of traps. Like and that's in general, you can save a lot of energy as well that way when designing, because every archetype, it's like, well, here's 3 unusable trap cards and then maybe 1 good one. Mitsurugi is the same. Did you guys know Mitsurugi has multiple trap cards? Because for some reason they tried to make trap cards for every archetype. And so people only end up playing the one that's completely busted and the other one is completely unplayable.
To unlimited, but Purification needs to go. Replace with a Magatama. You're making the board a bit worse, but I don't think it's the end of the world for people who love pure Mitsu. Moving on to the next list of decks. So we'll talk about the complementary engine for canines. So the first one is Vanquish Soul. So this deck still has a lot of success, but it's more of a pure canine deck. I think the not pure canine. It's your hybrid deck, but it's more canine than it is Vanquish Soul. I think that the VS deck is very good, like it won Euros without the canine card, so it definitely is strong on its own. But the big outlier card is Sue. I don't think this card existing is a problem, but you should not draw it anywhere near as much as you do. You should have to get to it through Engine, and then loop it, and then use it on your opponent's turn that way. Like, once I've gone through the work of searching,
I'm okay with hitting Holy Sue, but only if you give us back Stake Your Soul and Raisin. Because at the moment, there's no reason to ban Holy Sue. I literally top 8'd a YCS without ever resolving Holy Sue as a hand trap going second. I never drew it because there's not enough Vanquish Soul names, there's not enough fires. So at the moment, this card is not a problem because it statistically just doesn't really happen. And I think, honestly, giving us back Raisin and Stake Your Soul and taking away Holy Sue or putting it to 1, I think is completely fine. I think that's a fair exchange. You get more consistency and then you lose 2 hand traps. Okay, sure, I'll take it. But realistically, you should just kill K9 and give us back Vanquish Soul.
First Sue and using it, it's fine. That's, I've used cards and resources to get there. When you're just turn 0 suing out of nowhere, it's really impressive. And so Sue can definitely go around down to 1, and then the other ones can come back up. I think this is the correct way of hitting the deck. Sue isn't so broken that it needs to get banned. You're going to get high roll sometimes, but those games aren't guarantee wins. Even though it's a very strong card, I think it's fine once you've intentionally searched it. And Raisin and Stickers.
I mean, so far this is, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was expecting this because Santoli is based, but this list so far is perfect, except for the fact that the Ripper ban just will not happen. But that doesn't mean it's wrong to say it should happen. It definitely should.
Soul, not the problem cards in the deck. I think that Pure VS maybe will come back after this. She was a big hit. Maybe they still have some form of hybrid, but not the full K9 package. Maybe you're doing different mixtures, but I think this is a much healthier lineup of things with 3 Raisin, 3 Stake, because those cards.
Honestly, I don't even think I don't think Vanquish Soul comes back from this with 1 Holy Sue. I think Holy Sue at 2 would already be good enough. I think, and then you would not even play Vanquish Soul for sure. But like, 1 or 2 Holy Sues, I think, and then this. Maybe you'll consider playing Pure Vanquish again.
Are perfectly fine, and then Sue preventing the high rolls from happening as much by putting it down to
Can
1.
you link the video? Yes, hold up. There you go. I'll pin it as well.
Deck that got hit by the cannon hits is Christian. I think inclusion can go back to 3, given that there's one other hit, which is just getting rid of all the degenerate combos that you can do. Christian is just killing Imperial Princess Concurring.
Yes.
The question that can be asked here when you're looking at this is, it feels like we're banning Imperial Princess for the sins of K9, and that's kind of partially true, but also partially not, because K9 in essence is an unfair deck. Like, the pure K9 deck isn't unfair. It's when you start doing unfair things with it that it becomes unfair, and this is the card that enables. Like, yes, you need the rank.
It is kind of true. Imperial Princess Quinkery only became a problem because of K9, but it's just a ticking time bomb sort of effect. We have learned this in the past. Cards that summon any sort of monster to your opponent's side of the field are big, problematic card designs. And so, like, even if you hit K9 now and then Imperial Princess Quinkery doesn't get played anymore, that's not going to last forever. Eventually, there is going to be another level 5 deck that can do it. And so, like, you're just waiting for that to happen again, right? Because, I mean, look at Sanctifier, which also everyone said ban Sanctifier, please ban Sanctifier instead of banning around it, and they definitely should have. but at least Sanctifier is basically tied to one deck, and that's branded. So you can basically control the popularity of Sanctifier by hitting or not hitting branded on a ban list. Quinkery is a design problem for every single new archetype that has level 5s, because it's not tied to any one archetype.
Rank 5 engine of the canines to actually do unfair things, but you also need this card. This card's run Reviving Lance, this card's run Reviving Spell Canceller.
Sanctifier is so cool though, just ban the floodgates. See, that's the thing, right? They could also do this, and I would not be opposed to it. However, in reality, they just aren't doing that because there is so many of them, right? That you would have to ban so many stupid cards that don't deserve to be on the ban list. Like Artifact Mjolnir is a perfect example of this, which they have banned, but there's like friggin' incantations or whatever people are talking about now with the Imperial Princess to lock the opponent. There's so many random cards you would have to ban. They're not keeping up with it.
And I'd be much happier playing against a pure Christian. They have all their full engine, and you just don't have the ability to do anything degenerate with this. And, you know, they just make their normal canine Christian board. And I think that's perfectly fine. I think also with the Ripper ban on top, this is completely reasonable to bring inclusion back to 3. I think the Christian engine is strong, but it's not strong enough that warrants a hit. And we can just
basically, the problem with these kind of cards is that they punish them for good card design. Because the best cards to give your opponent are the cards that lock yourself, right? Like, if they make a card with a solid lock on it, which is healthy, which is what we want most of the time, it becomes a problem if you can summon it to your opponent's side of the field. It's stupid, right? It's like we want those cards to have locks. We want cards to be restricted so that they can't be used in too many different ways, in too many combo piles and whatnot. And then like you flip the script by giving it to your opponent. It's just dumb. Like Spirit with Eyes of Blue. Exactly. Spirit with Eyes of Blue is a completely fair card. If you want to hit every single floodgate that Sanctifier can give to your opponent, you also have to hit Spirit with Eyes of Blue, because it locks the player that controls it into dragons. Right?
It's hard to make sure there's no of these FTKs coming out from the canine engine. Like I said, there may need to be more canine hits in the future, but I think these are at least fine to try with for another list. The next deck we need to talk about, because it's still somehow performing, is Malice. So in Master Duel, Red Ransom got hit. The deck is still very strong. It does have Splash Mage and Link Decoder, so it still has a lot of good Cyverse cards. We lost Splash Mage and Decoder. We have Ransom still. I think a normal person would kind of just say, you know, continue what the Master Duel did and hit Ransom. At some point, we're going to run out of power in the Malice deck once we hit enough things, but I'm not a believer of that anymore. It's been out for a year now. It's been top 5 deck the entirety of its lifespan. It's been top 3 deck the majority of it. The only time it wasn't was when VS was running around in Yugioh format. But I'm done giving this deck chances. I'm done going, oh yeah, we can try to hit it and see what happens. Like, no, murder it. We're just banning Dormouse. If you love Malice, sorry, I think that
no one does.
Once we see that this deck is hit enough, we can then bring back some other Cyberse cards, not Splash Mage, but
No.
White Rabbit and Field Spell, and yeah, you lose Dormouse, but I think this is the biggest way of just toning down the power level of the deck as well. Like I said, we're not bringing back anything else yet. This deck just needs to die. It needs to get out of the sun for a bit. It's super toxic playstyle. It's very all or nothing. It has an awful time going second if your opponent makes a semblance of a board. It feels like a very hand comparison deck where starter extender. At some point, if you have another extender, you win the game. I don't like that playstyle. I'm just removing Dormouse from the game. Make sure this deck gets out of the meta for a bit, and then we can bring back
some Malice name needs to be banned. I don't know.
Also, I believe I said bring back White Rabbit. I may be mixing up Banlist. It'll be bring back the Field Spell. It's the big thing. Moving on to Draco Tail, which is another arguably top 3 deck, top 5 deck, depending on how I put it. This deck is very hard to hit because
I thought about it more in my banlist discussion. I said they only barely need to hit Draco Tail. I think if they're doing all of this, I think it is fair to hit Draco Tail. If you're looking at the things that are coming out soon, like the new Albaz support is also very strong for Draco Tail. So I think some Draco Tail hits are actually warranted. And also seeing how good the deck is in the OCG, even with one Ketu, I'm not opposed to hitting Draco Tail. I like the playstyle, but I do think it deserves to be hit.
Because the deck, all the cards get you to everything. Like as soon as you perform one fusion summon, everything gets everywhere. And the other question is, how much do we actually need to hit this deck? Because I think this deck is just super healthy in general, but the power level of it is a bit too high. My opinion of the best hit for this would be actually hitting one of the traps. Hitting something like Flame, in my opinion, is the best idea because you're now forcing them to play with more of the fusion cards as opposed to just premium card advantage. This deck wasn't overbearing before we got the last set, which is escaping my memory right now. Because
do you know why I dislike this? I think this forces Dracotail players to focus more on like the combo versions of the deck and less on the grindy version of the deck, which I think is less fun from my perspective. Like what this is gonna do is just gonna force people to play like, oh, Dracotail Magistus or Dracotail Albaz once it comes out, like the branded Dracotail stuff. Like you're just gonna play higher ceiling decks and you're gonna lose that playstyle of like pure Dracotail. And I think that's kind of meh. I don't know. It's not my favorite way to go about it. Because it doesn't really stop people from playing Dracotail. It just makes people play Dracotail in a less fun way, in my opinion.
You only had 2 traps to set. You're only getting 2 draws. You don't run away with card advantage immediately. And I think just bringing it back down to 2 traps is the correct way of hitting it. I don't think this is an economy hit at all. This is a Ray Santolias kit trying to very meticulously lower the power level.
I think this works from his perspective because he's just thinking like, oh well, I'm gonna play Dracotail in the grindy way anyways, even with 2 traps. And from that perspective, it's like, okay, yeah, you play pure Dracotail with 2 traps, it probably now becomes a significantly weaker deck, but that's not what people want to do, or that's not what people will do. Like, I think what you need to do in order to keep pure Dracotail alive, but like, once again, we're gonna run into this problem with Dracotail soon that we currently have with decks like Yami and Mitsu, right? Where the pure version of Yami and Mitsu is the fun one to play against, or like the fair and balanced one, but all the hybrids are the ones that people complain about. This is about to happen with Dracotail. I'm afraid to inform you, but once we get Spenta, once we get the new Albaz stuff, people are gonna play Dracotail hybrids, and that's gonna be annoying. Those are gonna be when it's not just, oh, an Arthalion, a Gulamel, and 3 Dracotail traps that I have to play through. No, now there's going to be all the other things that those cards facilitate, right? So my question is, how do we hit Dracotail / the hybrids preemptively without murdering pure Dracotail? And I don't think banning Flame does this. I think banning Flame encourages people to play Spenta slop or the Albaz branded slop in Dracotail even more. So I don't know. I think we're looking more at like you should hit the spell cards probably.
About changing things. So I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I think that is the best hit. In terms of what the actual hit is, like I said, I think this is a healthy deck, so we don't need completely.
Because when you hit like when you hit Ketu or Rahu to 1 or 2, respectively, I think it's like you can still play pure Dracotail, but you're gonna play like other fusion engines. Like people might go back to like Poly or the big dragons that confuse or whatever, and the hybrid variations are not going to be quite as effective because you simply like the easiest way to get the fusions going in those hybrids is just drawing one of the spell cards.
And I don't want to kill too many starters. I think Ketu can get hit down to 2. I think we can also hit Femina down to. I think like a Rahu to 1, Ketu to 2 or something, or both to 2 at the minimum. Like I like hits on the spells. 2 as well. It seems weird that I'm hitting both of them to 2. I think if we were to hit either of them to 1, it'd be a bigger hit because you want to go through multiple copies of a game, and so having them at 2 and 2 instead of 3 and 1 in either direction, I think is.
That's kind of what the new Albaz is. It just summons Cartesia. Yeah, but like that version is going to be a thing no matter what. Like that's something that is out of the question. We cannot prevent this from happening. As soon as the branded stuff comes out, branded Dracotail is just sick. Like that's just something that we have to accept, right? And so like the most impactful thing you could do to that deck is limit the amount of power spells it has next to branded fusion as well, right? Because I think that deck doesn't care if it only plays 2 spells in only 2 traps, right? But it does care about less starters and less extenders and less ways to push through Ash Blossom if you hit the Dracotail spells, right? So it's like and I don't think that deck necessarily is a huge problem if we limit its thing. I mean, okay, banning Flame specifically because it's usually the most annoying end board piece to deal with, I would not be opposed to it because then the deck also becomes weak to stuff like Lightning Storm maybe or Feather Duster. Like it'd be okay. I once again like Santoli's saying, like I don't think it's super realistic. So I don't hate the flame hit, but I'm also not convinced it's enough.
It's a weaker hit, but I think this deck's overall healthy, and I don't think we need to hit it super large. Ketsu's your best starter going second. Faimia is one of your turn 0 plays that can high roll. I think lowering the odds of drawing those is good enough, and
I don't think it's a big problem in general, but I don't think there's a way to hit Dracotail that makes Pure a more favorite way to play. That is fair enough. I think that is true. But I think banning one of the traps basically hits that version the most by far. Like, I think with only 2 traps, no one is ever going to touch Pure Dracotail again, especially without Flame. Like, you're just not going to play Pure Dracotail, period, right? So it's like, maybe there's other ways that maybe people are still going to favor, like, the branded version, but maybe there's a way to do it that doesn't completely destroy Pure Dracotail. You know what I mean? Like, at least have it be an option for people who prefer that playstyle, maybe. But with only 2 traps, you're just never going to play it.
It's fine enough for a hit. This deck will likely need more hits going forward in the future, but I think that with the healthiness of it, like Yummy, I think I'm just fine having this be tier 1 for another format and just taking a little bit off the top of it. So this is basically all the main meta-relevant hits. So doing some other housekeeping on the ban list of what else we can...
I think you could ban Branded Fusion. It's not necessary anymore to anyone. They're not going to do that. They just released freaking Albaz lore anime. We get more Albaz support in the next set. And even though, yes, that support can play without Branded Fusion, I just don't think now is the time. Like, I agree with you. I don't think we need Branded Fusion in the game. I don't think it offers that much for Yu-Gi-Oh as a whole, but at the same time, right now, like, it's not gonna happen.
So one thing we have in Master Duel, which I've been enjoying, is the existence of the Orcus deck, and I think Mermaid is a card that could come back. That being said, this card searches a very toxic card in the form of Ibly, and so we can just do this little nice thing of ban Ibly, bring back
like
Mermaid,
this.
And I guess this can come to 3. It doesn't need to be at 1.
I think that's nice.
Anyways. And this will allow the pure Orcus deck to exist. I think the pure Orcus deck is very cool. It has a lot of gas to it. You often play fairly...
Of course, people compare Nightmare Mermaid and Nightmares in general to Moon of the Closed Heaven and to Fiendsmith, which I was very happy that they banned Moon of the Closed Heaven eventually. I think Nightmare Mermaid is different in the sense that all of the Orcus things lock you into darks, so it is a little more restrictive. It does promote combo slop a little bit, but at the same time, like, the combo slop that Nightmare Mermaid promotes is so much weaker than so much combo slop we already have that's perfectly legal, right? It's like, I don't know. I think between, it's like saying, like, similar to Nightmare Mermaid, I think also the Prank Hits Link one should probably come back. We have so many more broken starters these days, so many more broken 1-card combos than like what a Prank Hit normal summon does. Like a Prank Hit normal summon was maybe cracked like 4 years ago or something, but nowadays, like, come on, there's like so many other 1-card combos that do way more than what Prank Kids used to do or whatever. So yes, Nightmare Mermaid and Prank Kids Link Meow Moo are like a little bit more combo slop than what I like personally, but I just don't see a justification for those cards to be banned. And like Pure Orcust especially is really not a problem. It really isn't.
Engine heavy hands, not super engine heavy, but you know, your engine is good. You can start pushing through boards with that, and it's a deck I enjoy playing against. In Master Duel, I have the Fiends with the Orcus deck because they still have Moon and Mermaid, so you can bridge from both engines into each other. I don't think we need that. The Fiends with cards are gone. Playing Pure Orcus and just having something like Engage as an additional starter, I think it's just interesting. I think overall as well, the Orcus engine is played a bit. You know, it does have tops. People like it, and just giving the extra bit of consistency, I think, is perfectly fair for a deck that has an end board that is, you know, solid but not completely overwhelming. It is a deck that I would like to see exist. Other things we can do for the ban list is bring Sacred Tree back. I don't know why this card's still on the ban list at all. This card's fine. It's even in the context of the deck, it's not insane. It's only really good in the Runic Betrayer deck, which I don't think will take off again. The other thing we can talk about, bring back, is Sprite Elf. So this is one of those cards that I think people get very worried about bringing back because of the
it's not worth it.
But a few things to keep in mind is that we do have this in Master Duel, and it is played. It's played a much...
It's just not worth it. Every time this pops up in Master Duel, it's toxic. it's like it only sees play every once in a while, but every time it does, bro, no shot. No.
Of decks, it
I love this card to death, man, but no.
comes up in White Forest. Some people will use it in tier, although they don't have Merly to revive. It's used in the Sprite decks, obviously, but I think overall the card is just fine. I think the non-targeting effect is kind of fake. Overall, like,
well, what's fine about this? People use it to like revive a Stellar in random sprint lines. I think the big problem is that like maybe Sprite Elf could exist if Sprite Sprint didn't exist. I just think you can't have both at the same time, because what it means is you can send any level 2 from deck to grave and then revive it, and that's not okay. You can't have both at the same time, I think, is the problem. Like if we had just Elf but no Sprint, maybe it would be fine, but we cannot have both, because that basically reads summon any level 2 from your deck, and that is not a design space that you want to be in, and that's not good.
And it does come up.
And also, I don't like the argument of, well, Master Duel has it, because that is not the benchmark. We don't want to be more like Master Duel here.
But I don't think anything this card does overall is super unfair. Like, it's a Link 2 that can't climb into another one immediately. It is a non-targeting, but you're investing 2 bodies into it to prevent targeting, and it's very specific on the non-targeting it has, and since it's only the 2 zones it points to, and it needs to be
also literally early. The last thing that people did with this in Master Duel is freaking Gem Knights FTKing people with Christia. Is literally the last thing that happened with Sprite Elf. Like, that's not even 2 weeks ago.
I think this is a big boost to Sprite. It's also a big boost to Yummy, in my opinion, because you do have the synchros that you can revive with this now.
Like, once again, I'm okay with this, but they have to ban Sprint if they do this. If you want to make that swap, then I would be okay with it. From their perspective, I see no reason to do this right now. But like, if they want to swap Sprint for Elf, sure. But like, they cannot exist together, in my opinion.
If they're losing Herald, them getting something like Sprite Elf is completely fair. It's more interesting because now...
To be fair, Sprint might be the bigger war criminal between the two, because Sprint is the one that accesses the deck. You know, I think inherently accessing the graveyard is less toxic than accessing anything from the deck. I think that is a lesson that we have learned in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or not learned, if you look at some of the cards that they make. But cards that summon or send anything very generically from your deck often tend to be very powerful, and also are the ones that like, oh, this is how I search my toxic one of, right? And I think that goes for both Gigantic and Sprint, but Sprint at least, like, Sprint doesn't lock you, Gigantic at least locks you. So like, I would be okay if they changed Elf with Sprint, but we cannot have both at the same time.
You're making their board more sticky, but you're not making their board better at all. It's not like they end on more because of it. I think this is a good way of approaching things, and I'm a Sprite enjoyer. I would like to see this card come back and, you know, the deck have some more functionality in it.
Sprite itself would also make that trade. As a Sprite enjoyer myself, I would always rather have Elf than Sprint in the Sprite deck, right? Like, I would trade that immediately.
Other things to talk about is Droll and Lockbird. This is a card a lot of people want banned, and I'm going to put this in unlimited. Not necessarily because, let's just put Mermaid here because it doesn't matter if it's at 1 or 3. Not necessarily because I think Droll is healthy. If this card gets banned or hit to any margin level, I will not be upset at all. But the big thing with Droll is I don't think it goes into healthy formats and ruins them. There are a lot of Floodgate-esque cards, D-Barrier, Shifter, that go into formats that are very healthy or would be very healthy or being somewhat healthy, and they just make it so much worse. It hits the fair decks as hard as it hits the unfair decks, sometimes harder, and it just leaves the format a lot worse because of it. I don't think Droll is this type of card. I think if you have cards or decks that lead to interaction, stuff like...
The problem with Droll is I think that idea of Droll is really good against the toxic decks and doesn't see play if everything is balanced, I think is no longer reality in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Because the reality is that even the fair and balanced mid-range decks search more these days. Like, the average deck just searches more, which means that Droll and Lockbird it's starting to become like a thing where Droll barely even has bad matchups anymore. Like, even like the matchup where Droll is supposed to be the worst is against Draco Tail. And even against Draco Tail, like, there are moments where they go like Ketu, add Lucius, and then you roll and they pass the turn. And so, like, even or like Blue Eyes or whatever, which is like a mid-range deck from this year, where like some hands they would go ahead and go normal summon Sage, search for something, and then you activate Droll and they get destroyed. And it's like, for the most part, Droll becomes a card that just makes the game less fun for everybody. Not just the toxic combo decks anymore. Which is the same development that Maxi has gone through. You know, Maxi used to be a card that was bad against some decks, decent against some others, and really good against like the toxic decks that were trying to do way too much. And over time, it's just gotten to a point where now every deck special summons. So Maxi is good against every deck and wins against every deck. And I think Droll and Lockbird is approaching that same direction. And sometimes you just have to realize that certain Yu-Gi-Oh cards just don't age well. And Droll and Lockbird has not aged well. It was a completely fine card when they printed it. That was meant to counter niche strategies. Nowadays, it just is not interesting and ruins games for basically any deck every once in a while.
Yummy stuff like Pure Razel, stuff like Draco Tail. Those types of decks. I think that Droll is just often very bad against these types of decks. And it's very good against the decks that are very toxic. And so having it in the game is kind of a fail-safe whenever some toxic deck runs out of control, I think is a good thing. I don't think it leads to interesting gameplay, but I think it's more the fault of the unfair decks as opposed to Droll. And I think when we have healthy metas, Droll doesn't come into the format at all. And people...
So when was the last time people didn't play Droll, is what I ask here. Like, we've definitely had healthy metas. Right now is a relatively healthy meta. And when was the last time people didn't play Droll and Lockbird? Unchained Rescue Ace? Okay, so that's 2 years ago. I don't know. I don't know if I buy it. I don't know if I buy it. I don't know if I believe in this anymore, that like, oh, all they need to do is like make the format healthy and then Droll and Lockbird is going to disappear. I think Droll and Lockbird is just going to see play, like it even sees play in Genesis format. That format is like, okay, it's not completely balanced. There is shit in Genesis format that definitely isn't okay. But friggin', if Droll and Lockbird is a staple in Genesis format, how low do you want the power level of Advanced Constructed to be for people to stop playing Droll? How balanced can they make Advanced Constructed for people to stop playing Droll? I don't think it's going to happen. People are not going to stop playing Droll and Lockbird.
Do you like to overestimate this card where they go and say, oh, this card's insane in every single format? Like, oh, it's insane versus Pure Razel. Like, no, it's not. Like, you really do need to hit decks with low non-engine with this card for it to feel amazing. If you're playing decks that are very fair, often they have a lot of non-engine, or they have plays through Droll because they're not just getting unlimited advantage, and Droll just feels subpar there. So, like I said, I don't think this card's necessarily healthy, nor will I be upset if it gets hit, but I also don't think that it needs to particularly take the bull. I'm fine having it in the game as a failsafe.
I think we need to get rid of the failsafe specifically so they are forced to deal with what some of these combo decks are doing. I think that is my main argument. I want to rip off the band-aid.
One last card.
A fair deck like Malice therefore plays through Droll.
Talk about is Featherstorm. There's also a bunch of other floodgates that should be in the banned pile, but you go through them every single Banlist video. Called by, Crossout, Gozen, TC Boo, Rivalry, Shifter, all those kind of floodgate-esque cards, they can go. The one I'm bringing Featherstorm, this isn't hit at all. It's also shiftable off Thrust. It's also good in the Radiant Typhoon deck, which is why I'm intentionally bringing it up now. But I think all those kind of floodgate-esque cards can, with the exception of Droll, can make their way up here into the ban pile. So overall, this is where I think the ban list should be. This is what would make me happy. Overall,
I would have liked to mention on the water barrier statue, because people are searching that in Mitsurugi now instead of the other ones that they banned. But other than that, I mean, look, I agree with most of this. I think it's a pretty based list. I don't agree with Sprite Elf if we're not banning Sprite Sprint. I don't like to see Droll and Lockbird survive another list. I think we need to get rid of that at some point, sooner rather than later. Other than that, it's pretty based.
I think what this does is it brings up the fairer decks, Yami, Vanquishal, the K9 Christian deck when you don't have Floodgates, Draco Tail. It allows those decks to function. I think these, even though the decks are very powerful, these are decks that lead to a very...
And even to an extent, I understand what we're talking about here with Droll and Lockbird. Like, I get the sentiment. Like, yes, if people were to play more fair decks like Draco Tail and just pure Yummy and whatever, you know, people would probably maybe eventually stop playing Droll and Lockbird, or even if they keep playing Droll and Lockbird, if you play those decks, usually it's not gonna annoy you as much. It's not gonna provide interesting gameplay, but you don't like automatically die all the time when you get rolled. So like, yes, under the premise that they fix the balancing of the advanced constructed format, Droll and Lockbird can probably stay. I would rather, you know, get rid of it and then deal with the aftermath and force them to hit combo decks harder, basically.
Format. And this format, half the decks
But
are
I
really
see
good,
where
it's
we're
just
coming
have
from.
a lot of non-games as well. And so I think removing those non-games with a lot of the problem cards up here will lead to an interesting format. Hopefully we get something similar to this for 300th to have a good event for that. Let me know your comments in the comment section down below. What are your opinions on this list? Or anything I missed? Are there things you change? And until next time, guys.
All right.
Until later.
Nice one. I mean, I feel like we have a pretty similar idea usually on these things, so I'm not surprised, but pretty based takes all things around.